All right, so we got this piece back from Mike doing all the fiberglass work. We're about to start sanding it out. If you haven't watched his video, he should be having it up soon. Go check it out. But he's went through and did all the fiberglass and fixed everything. So all we gotta do is run over this thing with 180. We got a couple of Zeus fasteners left to get out and clean up any edges that are rough from actually building them. You know, actually when the piece was new. Fill in any imperfections, just go over it, comb over it, get it all knocked down 180. He's done all of the fiberglass work. We got some little areas to fill in with some dolphin glaze here and there. But yeah, that was a lot of work. So if you haven't checked out his video, definitely subscribe. Whenever he drops it, you'll be able to see it. So we're gonna get all these bolts out of here, run over all of this, and smooth everything out and get this thing in one good heavy coat of primer, and then come back after the primer and block it all out. He's had to patch a ton. All of the edges had to be done. You don't want to put body filler on all this stuff because it'll just pop off from all the vibrations and everything. So he had to do a mix that he'll go over on his channel of how to mix it up. Basically, you can use it like a filler. He had to re-straighten out all the edges. If you remember, this edge was curved back. He added all that edge back there. We're gonna clean up the Zeus rails. He's went and notched them down. He goes over all that on his video, but we're gonna clean all that up. All right, so all we're trying to do right now is just straighten out some of these body lines. So when Randy originally wrecked this thing and hit this corner, Brian had to do a bunch of work to fix all this, and he just did an absolute amazing job, in my opinion, because if Randy would have brought me this whenever originally it got wrecked, I would have told him absolutely not, that he needs to just go ahead and order a front clip, and that we could probably put some duct tape over it to send it down the track for next weekend, but absolutely not. But all this right here is just absolutely amazing, in my opinion, because there's no way I would have wanted to put all these body lines back. I mean, you got a body line down here, you got a body line there, you got a body line there, you got a body line there, that rolls up into there, and then that body line disappears up there. Like, it's a lot. So props to him for that, because yeah, I would have just straight up said nope, let's duct tape it, and yeah, let's order another one. So, and for the amount of time that he had, I believe it was only like a week. I mean, it's pretty solid for the amount of time that he turned around and repaired all that. But all I'm trying to do now is basically just straighten out everything, smooth this out, and get it in primer. It might take 2 coats of primer on this. I don't know, we'll see, but we at least have to smooth it out, get it through a thick coat of primer, and then block on top of that. There's so much going on, and it's such a mess where you got Mike's repairs everywhere. You know, I've got factory defects, flaws in the mold. I've got wheel arches that were straightened out. You know, I got these body lines that we're trying to bring back, make sure they're there. It looks like the factory didn't really do a great job on putting that body line nice and sharp there, and I want that one sharp. So yeah, after we prime it, we're just gonna have to see what we got, see if we got enough to work with, you know, or if we need to do 2 coats of primer like we did over the quarters. But that's where we're at. I'm gonna keep on cleaning this up, but just when you see on time lapse, all I'm trying to do is just straighten out these lines, which is an absolute nightmare for anybody that's trying to straighten edges and lines out of fiberglass. So, but yeah, we're gonna knock it out. All right, so you probably noticed how I was sanding dry with just a regular piece of sandpaper, and then I actually switched it up to wet. So what I switched it up with is a 180 wet or dry sandpaper. You can get this at your local parts store. This is actually just some junk that we found in a flip car, actually, believe it or not. So you can go to like Vance Auto Parts and get this crap. But it's wet, dry, it's 180. Just happened to have it laying around, so I went ahead and burned it up this morning. Basically sanding on all this spray paint. The spray paint's absolutely terrible to sand on. What it does is clog up your paper fast. I think we went over this in one of the first videos of Randy's. You can actually see how it just sticks into the sandpaper and balls up. So blocking on this stuff, there it is. Okay, so let me see if we can get real clear. It literally just looks like, you know, rubber on a road. It just sits on top of it. So obviously this patch right here is not doing any cutting at all. The only thing that's doing is just riding on top. So you're just working harder, not smarter. So in this situation, as you know, I went ahead and switched over to some Dawn dish soap and some water and just wet sanded it out. And this helps keep the grit out of, or the spray paint out of the grit. So you can, it looks like it's dirty because this is wore out, but it's actually still really coarse. It's not just gummed up on top of it. The issue with this is anybody that jumps on the comments and knows what they're talking about is going to tell you that you're not supposed to be wet sanding anything like this. So you shouldn't wet sand primer, and I'll go ahead and teach you the right way. You shouldn't wet sand primer, you shouldn't wet sand fiberglass, you shouldn't wet sand none of this. So a lot of this stuff is porous since it's not clear coat and since it's not painted. So all of your little tiny water particles can get inside of the microscopic pinholes that are in the primer and the fiberglass. And then if you don't get all that water out before paint or primer, then it can cause issues where basically you're trapping water underneath the paint. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell you, you should not do what I'm doing. However, if you're sick of wet dry sanding on top of some crappy paint and clogging up your paper, bust out a bucket of soap and water and start wet sanding away. Just make sure you get it dry before you prime it. And this, we're not gonna have an issue drying it because we have been rolling the heater in here for a couple of days and we'll continue to roll the heater. So it will be really dry by the time it's time to prime it, and I blow everything off good too. But that's just your biggest thing, the reason why you shouldn't use the water when wet sanding on actual body work. But that's almost it. All I've got left is to DA. I just want to run over these flats one more time. I haven't did that one. Hit that one, and then finish hand blocking out this side from here down this curve. Now with your block like this, it's actually not that flexible. Like, it actually takes a good amount of pressure to bend it. It's a little bit flexible like we went over in the other video when we were blocking the quarters. But for a piece that's this curved, I mean, this thing has some extreme curves in it in all directions. Okay, it's just, that's not going to work. That's just going to show cut lines in the paint, you know, when you're done. And if you use a regular piece of sandpaper like this, what will happen is where your fingers are putting the pressure down on it, you'll actually be cutting lines that look like that. Okay, so since you're holding your sandpaper, you're actually digging small trenches in the paint like that. So this don't work that great. You need a little bit more support, but still be flexible. So when I fold up that paper into fours, it's a lot more flexible, and will bend around the edges and, you know, roll around the contour of the body. I'm sure it still could, technically, somebody could say that it's still cutting trenches in it. I get it. I'm keeping my fingers pretty tightly close, and it is 4 layers of pretty thick sandpaper. So, and I'm not putting a lot of pressure on it to dig down into it, but whatever you decide to do, if you're sanding something that's really curved, you got to have something that will flex over them curves, but something that's thick enough also to roll the curves and not dig trenches in them. So I'm going to finish blocking all this out. I'm not going to time lapse the rest of blocking this out because it takes a little bit of time. And you've seen the most interesting part, which is where the damage was. You can see all the body filler and primer that was put on here from the accident. This side should just be pretty straightforward. Shouldn't be too interesting. Then we'll dolphin glaze our little spots where our tape's at, and then we'll move on to getting a really thick coat of primer over this thing. All right, so we got this thing in the booth. Let's get some primer laid on it. And what ended up happening actually is when I started sanding over here, I found some dolphin glaze over here too. So somebody at some point had bull horns on both sides and they have been patched. That's just why there's dolphin glaze on it. So we're gonna get a nice thick coat of primer on this. This is just like the other car. Basically, there's so much going on. I need a foundation to work on top of. Hopefully we won't have to do 2 coats, but if we do, it's not the end of the world. We're at least gonna get this good thick coat. Hopefully I can block everything out off of this coat. I'm gonna shoot this boat motor cover while I'm in here. And I'm gonna take y'all along on the ride for priming this thing. And I'm literally gonna take y'all on a ride. So hang on. If you get dizzy easily, you might want to fast forward through the next part if it bothers you. I know that kind of video bothers my wife, but yeah, let's rock and roll.